Hey everybody, this is Lorraine Alternative Homesteading. I'm going to read about Computer Spying 101 from the book Gang-Stalking and Mind Control, The Destruction of Society Through Community Spying Networks by A.K.Forward. So here we go, folks. By the way, these chapters are not numbered. They're only titled, so I can't say, oh, it's chapter 1, 2, 3. It's a chapter on Computer Spying 101. It starts on page 48. If the target owns a computer, it will probably be covertly accessed on a regular basis, either by the gang stalkers or their handlers, in order to gain whatever information on the target they can compile, and to keep up to date on his or her activities, like it's any of their damn business. Computers are virtual black boxes as far as knowing what's really going on inside of them and how they work, and to think that nobody can remotely access one because it's turned off or not connected to the internet is foolhardy. At the upper levels of society, where gang-stalking activities are ultimately being organized and directed, the possibility of secretly incorporating backdoors in both hardware and software design is not unlikely at all. I've already mentioned that the intelligence agencies have backdoors built into more popular computer architectures, and many of the major computer manufacturers, both hardware and software, also entitle themselves to have an administrative account on any computer that is made by them or uses their products. Supposedly, this is only meant to allow them to more easily service their products. But with an administrative account, they have full access to your computer and to the millions of other computers they've sold on, which their products are running. It would be very easy for them or someone else to gather intelligence, quote unquote, and compile personal information taken from their customers' computers for deciding on marketing strategies or whatever else. And the government has its own more invisible access methods as well, as we'll see. To understand the extent of the situation and how it could possibly be, we should look back on recent history, because history tends to repeat itself. In the early years of the 1990s, computers were already being heavily used in business and were beginning to be found in more and more homes. The practicality of networking computer systems together was also taking off, and the plans for internetworking every computer system to form a global internet was heavily in the works. Microsoft's Windows 3.1 was very popular and was being installed on all IBM PCs that were being specially designed and promoted for the home user. Windows offered a friendly, easy-to-use, point-and-click interface that hid the complexities and strangeness of a command-line operating system such as DOS. The public was seduced by the heavy advertising campaigns and the enjoyment of owning a personal computer, and an explosion in the proliferation of these machines took place. This explosion in home computers was greatly influenced by the growing popularity of the internet, which is now becoming online more and more of the population as dedicated communications links were set up and internet service providers, ISPs, became more and more available. The government was working hand in hand with the major players in the business sector to get this digital network up and running. They had a heavy stake in the matter, since it raised some concerns, but it also created some opportunities. Yeah, like hacking. The Microsoft Corporation happened to be heavily targeted by U.S. government regulators during the development of the next version of their software, Windows 95. This targeting was due to the potential power that the meek-looking business entrepreneur Bill Gates, meek-looking, yeah, okay, Microsoft's founder, suddenly had in its hands. The American intelligence organs, that's weird, the American intelligence organs saw, I think this should say organizations, saw an incredible opportunity in Microsoft's position as owning exclusive rights to the software. that was the operating system for the vast majority of computers sold to both home and business users, and which promised to remain that way for some time. And they wanted to take advantage of this unique opportunity while Gates was still developing his next version of Windows, which was promised to have full internet capabilities built in. Well, let me tell you, that was a run-on sentence, folks. It has 2 periods at the end of it. Okay, this person, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. This person needs an editor. What the intelligence organizations wanted was a backdoor into the operating system so they could covertly access any computer system running on Windows software and connect it to the internet. At the very same time that Microsoft was being pressured into letting the intelligence agencies meddle with its software in ways that threatened the entire nation's right to privacy, the President of the United States was passing certain executive orders to give the U.S. government much greater domestic spying privileges, all in the name of terrorism. Although there was never any publicly stated intent to use Windows 95 as a cover for domestic and international spying, looking back in hindsight and reconsidering the events that took place reveals a very large-scale, pre-planned development and promotion of computer technology to encourage its acceptance and proliferation in both businesses and homes. The intelligence community saw the potential of the computer industry, and if they didn't take advantage of the opportunity early on, they might never have access to a vast source of quote-unquote intelligence that was quickly developing. Computers have become well established as a necessary part of our lives, and we have come to depend on them more and more as they creep ever deeper into our personal affairs. With most homes having full internet connections and wireless communications capabilities, remote access to any computer or wireless device can be achieved through backdoors. An incredible amount of evidence now exists, both physical and circumstantial, that reveals beyond any doubt whatsoever that the events that took place on September 11, 2001 were actually planned and orchestrated by certain parties within the very highest levels of the U.S. government. I'm just reading Facebook, YouTube, government. I'm reading a book. These are not my words. I'm reading a book. That they were actually planned and orchestrated by certain parties within the highest levels of U.S. government due to their ultra-elite status and the power and privileges that come with it. These people are virtually untouchable, and short of them admitting outright that they are the real terrorists behind 9/11 disaster, they show no signs of actual empathy for those who suffered that day, or who suffer even now because of the war that their extremely cold-hearted acts has continued to perpetuate. It's because they're psychopaths. The real purpose of the 9/11 disaster was to instill a sense of dread throughout the population and to use it to promote terrorism as a big enough and close enough and real enough threat that freedom-loving people would willingly take a giant step towards the Orwellian future that these perpetrators have in mind for the near future. Okay, remember, folks, when this book was published. This book was published 12 years ago. Okay? 12 years ago. It should be pointed out that at least some of these real perpetrators of these crimes come from the same elite families. Come from the same elite satanic families that were discussed earlier. George W. Bush, in particular, would make the perfect poster boy for the type of people that I'm talking about. Extremely wealthy, extremely powerful, and extremely cold-hearted. Whenever I hear that cold-hearted, it reminds me of that Paula Abdul song, you know? He's a cold-hearted snake. I actually know who that song was written for. Oh, I can't even tell you though, boys, girls. Sometimes they're extremely dysfunctional as well due to the psychological damage caused by their long-term involvement in satanic activities. George Jr. appears to have possibly suffered too much mind control experimentation and satanic ritual abuse during his life. It should also be pointed out that his father was head of the CIA when MK Ultra was still in full swing. I didn't know that, folks. Isn't that lovely? It's all in the family. After September 2001, certain laws were quickly passed that gave even greater foreign and domestic spying privileges to the intelligence agencies and allowed the military to perform domestic operations on their own citizens, essentially treating the American population as potential enemies of the state. A multi-governmental computerized communications monitoring system called Echelon is now online full-time, scanning all electronic communications worldwide, phone, text messages, email, fax, etc., for specific keywords and phrases that might be used by terrorists or by any other criminal element, or perhaps even by individuals and groups that might be seen as a potential quote-unquote problem. When anything of significance is detected by Echelon computers, a more refined screening is done, and closer scrutiny of all communications from the targeted party takes place. If it's required, manual monitoring is incorporated. Although the system is purposely being used only in the interests of national defense, in particular to seek out potential terrorists and or terrorist threats, the very ambiguity of what defines a terrorist or terrorist threat leaves virtually anyone open to being labeled as such, and therefore to being a target for spying on. If some gang-stalking groups are being controlled and directed from within the intelligence community, as they undoubtedly are, then the Echelon system is within the arsenal of those who control these groups, and it can be used to locate, monitor, and gather intelligence on targets, which can be useful in gang-stalking activities. Oh my goodness. Well, I'm going to tell you folks, hey, Echelon, how about this? My neighbors are terrorists. They are domestic terrorists. They are a terror threat. Do you want to know why, Echelon? They throw explosives on my property. That's a terrorist threat. You should monitor them. They also get their wild dogs to run wild down the county road. Unhinged. You never know what can happen with wild dogs. That's another terror threat. It's a threat to society. It's a threat to human life. Echelon. Stick that in your database and smoke it. Okay, so next chapter. More insights into gang stalking. The targets of gang stalkers can be totally unaware of what's going on around them, but sooner or later, the gang stalkers will usually make their presence known. This is part of the plan, and it's meant to build up the target's normal stress to a level of extreme distress, which over the long term results in feelings of anxiety, hopelessness, isolation, alienation, suspicion, and distrust of others. It also gives the gang stalking members a chance to flaunt their supposed power over the target, giving them a cheap ego boost that feeds their desire to continue participating in these activities. The handlers of these groups will take advantage of the person's desire for that little bit of power and continually draw them into further activities that they might not otherwise involve themselves in. For the police, this works just as well as with seniors and other honest law-abiding people, as it does with drug addicts and hardened criminals. We all desire to be seen as important and useful when our lives are otherwise insignificant and empty. Drawing otherwise good people into these activities begins with painting an image of the target for them that touches their fears, as was explained earlier. From this point, these people can be asked to perform seemingly innocent and relatedly harmless tasks, such as keeping an eye on the target, and taking notes of his or her comings and goings. As this goes on, the police make the gang stalking member believe that the information they're providing or the tasks they're performing are of great help to them, and this makes the member feel so important and useful, and they're even more willing to assist in whatever way they can. As the police draw these people into performing other little tasks, they continually lead them on by making them feel that they're making such a positive difference in the community, and filling them in on supposed facts about the target that are designed to encourage the person's continued involvement. Yes, you know what it's called, folks? It's called defamation, libel, and slander. Okay? So, I gotta plug in my phone here. In this way, it is possible for an entire neighborhood of otherwise good people, yeah, right, to become a virtual spy zone where everyone is surreptitiously keeping close tabs on everyone else, reporting everything to the police or another controlling party that manages them. Okay, let me just plug this in here, folks. Excuse me. I've got a low battery light on, so here we go. We're plugged in now. Participants of gang stalking. Groups that live together in the same neighborhood don't necessarily know all the other participants in the group, or they might know them slightly, but not enough to develop much trust. And these situations can be used by those who control these groups to have them keep tabs on each other. Isn't that interesting? While working together to target a person. Certain loose friendships might develop between participants of these groups depending on the group. But if they do, they're usually not very strong and don't last very long. Groups might undergo frequent turnover in their membership, with people being purposely circulated through a number of different groups in order to not let any strong bonds develop between the participants. With most of these groups, the idea is to keep members slightly distrustful enough of each other so that they won't begin to discuss their group activities among themselves and begin to see what they're involved in really, let me turn the page, really isn't making anything better, and is only causing more madness and misery in their own communities. Oh yeah, that's like what happens when the target starts writing letters to the Attorney General and the Department of Justice and the FBI. Oh, and senators and mayors and all that. The underlying motive for these gang stalking groups isn't just to monitor the target and inflict continual misery on him or her, but also to monitor and control the gang stalkers themselves by having them police each other or other groups in the same area. Oh goodness, a snitch is a snitch is a snitch. I had to add that in. Mind control technologies may be involved in some gang stalking activities, and in some cases, they might be used on the target. In other cases, they might be used on members of a gang stalking group. In yet other cases, they might be used on both. Where mind control, gang stalkers use the technology to torment the target. Mind control is a field that offers virtually unlimited possibilities for real-world applications, and whatever might be developed needs to be tested under various scenarios, and preferably on subjects that can be easily and closely monitored. Gang stalking groups are ideal for this. Most of the people that get caught up in mind control programs tend to be selected from the lower end of the social spectrum, and usually people with no immediate family or close friends who might notice anything unusual. This makes it easier to handle the person and to dispose of them if necessary. For this reason, it's likelier that mind control technologies would be used among the lower end of society before it's used more broadly. It's a common habit for people to believe rumor and hearsay, and this is often taken advantage of in gang stalking activities. The manner in which rumors can take on a growing sense of reality between those sharing them makes it very hard, if not impossible, for them to ever believe anything otherwise. Gang stalkers are encouraged by their handlers to believe anything that bears negatively on the target's character. And because of this predetermined negative characterization of the target based on rumors and hearsay instilled by those directing the gang stalking group, they're not likely to have a change of mind even if they come to know the target on any personal level. The power in rumor and hearsay is that the longer and more widely it's allowed to spread, the more likely it will be believed. Any gang stalker, should he or she have any doubts about what's being said about the target, will be up against both their handlers and the group, and this threatens their place within that group. Such a potential threat means both a loss of power as part of the group and a loss of friendships, and as far as these people might ever be considered friends. There's also the threat, of course, that they might themselves become a target of gang stalking, and it's almost a certainty that this will be subtly conveyed to each member of the group from time to time to keep them in line. That sounds lovely. Okay, we're going to read the next chapter. The next chapter is entitled Fighting Back. If a target becomes aware of the gang stalking activities directed at them, which they undoubtedly will sooner or later, they will normally react in a predictable way. This is the desire of the perpetrators who seek to cause relentless stress and discomfort to the target in hopes of breaking them mentally and emotionally. These are sick people. Very sick, depraved lunatics. The psychology behind gang stalking activities is to push the target to give in to the activities and accept being a victim to them. And it's very important that the target doesn't allow the intended effect to occur, and instead turn the situation more to their own control or advantage. The most important thing is for the target to not react to these activities, as they would normally feel compelled to do so. In fact, in most situations, they should not react at all. Instead, targets should just pretend that they're totally oblivious to these events and continue whatever they were doing, just as they were doing it without showing any signs of awareness of what is going on. The target needs to remember that they are more than likely being watched and even listened to no matter where they might be, particularly within their own home, but potentially anywhere, and their reactions to the gang stalker's activities will be closely scrutinized. For instance, scowling or cursing under the breath whenever a neighbor gang stalker makes a sudden loud or disturbing noises throughout the otherwise peaceful evening would reveal a response that the gang stalkers were seeking. They can be watching and listening to the target very closely for any sort of predictable response and will focus on doing things that appear to aggravate the target the most. The best thing for a person to do if they think they're being gang stalked is to get used to being constantly watched and listened to, and at every moment early on, and learn to not let it get to them. The only way to overcome these situations is to face them head on. Once that's done, the person will be able to think more clearly and can begin to develop a plan to fight back. It should also be noted that all surveillance, both audio and video, will be recorded. This means that everything the target says and does can be scrutinized very closely later on for any minute signs of response to gang stalking activities, so any telltale mannerisms that the target might reveal will likely be spotted. Oh, you mean every time I give you the finger? Oh, you poor little babies watching me. And everybody else. Even a slightly raised eyebrow or body twitch can give away a target's attempt to hide the effect that gang stalking activities might be having on them as they occur. If the gang stalkers can be completely ignored even after various different tactics have been attempted to frustrate the target, they'll definitely notice and might even become frustrated themselves. This would be a definite win for the target. What is the end goal of these activities? Why do these groups target people for no apparent reason? The gang-stalking activities are designed to appear coincidental or to otherwise seem so odd that telling anyone about them will only make the targets seem delusional. They're usually designed to cause the target to break down mentally, at which point they might even be converted into a gang-stalking member themselves. Oh yeah, good luck with that, losers. Good luck with that. The ultimate purpose of gang-stalking is to create a self-policing society of easily controlled citizens, morons, where all rights have been essentially taken away from the individual and special privileges are earned through acts of loyalty to the fascist government that currently lurks in the shadows of our society. Again, folks, this is 12 years ago this book is written. It's an inexpensive but very effective method that worked well in East Germany with the Stasi, in Stalinist Russia with KGB, and in Nazi Germany with the Gestapo. Fighting back might seem impossible when you consider the extent of this problem has crept through society, and the apparent inescapability from these groups and their controllers, given the range of technologies the controlling parties have at their disposal. However, it is possible to subvert some of the gang-stalking activity to some degree. Every target situation is different, but there are certain things that are fairly common to all targets, and there are ways to counter them. So some of the methods for fighting back are: install hidden cameras in and around your home, preferably with motion sensor triggers and the ability to time-stamp the footage. The idea is not so much to compile evidence that can be taken by the police, since the police are likely to be in the know and won't respond very favorably to such reports. The video cameras are to be used to begin your own counter-offensive, and to do so, you'll need to collect information on who your gang stalkers are, how they act during these events. Do they appear unconcerned about being in your home while you're away, or do they seem nervous and in a hurry? What times of the day or night do they usually act? What they commonly do during their acts, etc. One note of caution: the gang stalkers will be able to defeat this security measure with a universal remote control unit, so it's advisable to cover the remote signal receptor on your VHS machine with tape. 2. Change your normal routines often, preferably to disrupt the ability of the gang stalkers to predict your actions. Sacrifices will essentially have to be made, and this may include quitting your job for a while, sleeping at odd hours, taking roundabout routes to wherever you're going rather than the usual and more direct routes you normally take, getting a second residence somewhere. That's interesting. Anything that you notice in your actions that might be tipping off your gang stalkers to predictable patterns on your part should be altered to throw them off as much as possible. By doing this, you'll not only rid yourself of them, you'll make a job of keeping your tabs on their job of keeping tabs on you much harder. These people are not being paid much, if anything, so they might soon tire of putting more and more effort into their acts when there's less and less enjoyment for them in doing so. However, some of them will take any, turn the page. Some of them will take any tactics as a challenge and will increase their efforts. Next, change the locks on your doors regularly and don't leave any spare keys laying around anywhere. This probably won't stop them from getting into your home for long, but it will slow them down and inconvenience them. Give false leads to misdirect the efforts of the gang stalkers, such as telling somebody on the phone that you're going to a particular place at a certain time, when in reality you'll be going somewhere entirely different or just staying home. This will cause them to prepare to be at the false location and will scatter their efforts to stalk you. Carry a camera. Take pictures of anyone and anything you come across that seems suspicious and might be associated with gang stalking activity directed at you. Openly taking photos of anyone around you that seems suspicious might actually cause them to tip you off as to their involvement, since they may become uncomfortable when they realize that you're fighting back. If you think that somebody is entering your home while you're out because you continually find your possessions have been tampered with, and then taking close-up pictures of certain items and their precise positioning for later comparison for when you come home will let you know if you're imagining things or not. Very important, take before and after photos. Purchase the electromagnetic frequency, the EMF detector, and regularly scan your residence for hidden cameras, microphones, and other electronic technologies that might be being used against you. Be aware that your computer, cell phone, and other electronic equipment in your home or workplace might be doubling as surveillance devices, so they should be all shut off completely and then scanned for any persisting energy fields that could indicate surveillance of, surveillance devices that have been inserted in them. It should be noted also that the government has access to frequency ranges that lie outside of the detectable ranges of most EMF detectors. So these devices may often be of no use. Well, I hope you enjoyed those 3 chapters. I look forward to your questions and comments, and I know that a lot of you guys enjoy, listening to it in the background, so I hope this helps. I apologize for the shortness of the last video, but my phone alarm went off, and unfortunately, whether I hit it to disappear or it disappears on its own, it just automatically interferes with whatever it is I'm recording, and I have to start over again. So I hope everybody's doing well. I'm going to sign off for now.